Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Wen, a retired nurse practitioner and the founder and practitioner at Arizona Healing Alternatives. I'm passionate about you knowing what your options are, whether in Western medicine or alternative medicine. So stay tuned for this aha moment. For today, we're going to be talking about the MTHFR mutation. Whew, it's a mouthful. What is it? What does it do in our body? And why is it important for our health? And then what I'm going to talk about are options with it, and then a little personal story from my own life about it. So MTHFR actually stands for methylate tetrahydrofolate reductase. Wow, is that a mouthful? Okay, and I probably even pronounced that incorrectly. What I'm going to do is everything I discussed today, I'm going to put a couple of really very, very informative articles on this subject that explains it and what the gene mutation is. And we'll go into a little bit of it here, but definitely not into great detail about it. But ultimately, what that is it's a specific enzyme, and it's an enzyme that's so important in the body because what it does is any food that you eat or any supplement that you take that has B vitamins, that's a lot because a lot of substances and foods have B vitamins in them. Well, that specific enzyme helps the part of the body that programs DNA and other things to break down those B vitamins so we can use them for energy and bodybuilding and healthy metabolic functions. It works in so many levels to have healthy DNA, to also have healthy neurological things going on, metabolic issues, hormone issues, all sorts of different things in the body that are so important to its functioning. So, what does it mean if you actually have a gene mutation? Okay. Well, first of all, it's fairly common. About like 40%, and some articles will say 40 to 60% of the population carries a gene mutation. But is it an issue? Okay. Well, the issue becomes, and this goes into a big detail of genetics, which we don't need to do, but the genetics of it are you may inherit it just one side of the family and not the other, in which case, when that happens, you may not have a form of it that causes any problems in your body at all. Okay, you may just carry the mutation for it, but that doesn't mean that your body will go on and have problems. And then there's people who inherit it from both sides of the family, and there's two specific gene mutations that you can get. And then if you get it from both sides or you get it from one, but you have more than one of them, what can happen is you can end up actually getting problems. Okay, and so that's problems. When we think about B vitamins, we talk about in pregnant women having them take folic acid and folate and things like that to prevent neural tube defects. So these things are, and this is in their babies, very, very important processes in the body that relate to this specific enzyme. And so if you have the form that comes that where you may have inherited from both sides, and it's going to express itself genetically. If it's going to express itself, what does that mean? Express itself doesn't mean it's talking to you, but it kind of is. What it means is expression of that gene means that it actually does affect those metabolic processes and how you break down B vitamins and use them in the body. All right, well, what can happen? What can happen is you can get higher homocysteine levels, and those levels, it's a specific amino acid. Now, a lot of research, it's so funny because some people talk about it and say there's no big deal with it, and some people say, oh, it's a huge deal. But those that now that we're getting more studies on it and we're getting more data on this gene mutation, what can happen is it can affect all sorts of different body processes. Like we talked about just a moment ago, it can affect thyroid function, hormone levels. It can also affect their thinking related to things like cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, neurological conditions. It can also lead to these homocysteine levels. If they're high in some people, it can lead to more inflammation, and that can lead to cardiovascular diseases and breakdown and strokes and clots and all sorts of different things it can go into. Well, does that mean if you carry one side of it and it doesn't express itself, does that mean, oh my gosh, you're going to have those problems? No, not at all. So I want you to hear that really clearly. It may be that you carry this and you have no idea. Okay. It's similar to somebody, sort of similar and sort of different to if somebody's Rh negative they have to have both sides of the negative factor in order for them to actually be Rh negative in their blood type, versus if they carry a positive and a negative, they'll be Rh positive, but they might carry the negative that can pass on. I know that's like way out there for genetics, but ultimately for those that actually have both of these together, then where they express themselves, it can lead to some really serious issues. So with that, what it also can do when it comes to serious issues, which I forgot to mention, was it can make it so that the body has a really, really difficult time detoxing. So our bodies are really good at, if you eat something bad, or if there's something going on, or you're taking certain medications, or you're taking vitamins, it's really good at processing through the liver and then just excreting what it doesn't need. Well, if you have this MTHFR that's expressing itself, what can happen is you may find that you are more sensitive to medications, or taking medications that you just can't tolerate it. You may find that you can't tolerate things such as alcohol and other things like that. You just can't tolerate it because you just don't feel good, is what I mean by not tolerating. Well, what ends up happening is that's because your body and your liver cannot detoxify the way it needs to detoxify and get rid of some of this stuff, so it builds up, which is where they're starting to find those studies about cardiovascular diseases, even ADHD, ADD, autism, all sorts of different things can be, may not be, but can be related to this MTHFR gene mutation. So that's why it becomes so important. So now, what do you do about it? All right, well, in the articles that I'm going to put in the little narrative section for you, it talks about some really good things to do. Now, I'm going to go into my personal story in a minute, but it talks about different ways to detox and different foods. And some people say eat more B vitamin foods, and some people say less because it can get toxic in the system. Well, my personal story on this was, ever since I was little, they would tell me if I ever had a scan done or whatever, that my liver was bigger. Okay. And at first I thought it was fatty liver. And here's the funny part about it is I've never had a hangover in my life because I don't drink enough alcohol, never have, because I just don't tolerate it. I don't tolerate it. I don't like the taste of it. So what's so funny is that they would say, at first they said in scans, oh, it's fatty liver. And then they said, no, it's not fatty liver. It's just bigger. Okay. Well, I could tell, because on the right side of my rib cage, I could tell that that side kind of bulged a bit, but we just figured, okay, maybe it's just something that I was born with, okay, is what, most of the docs assumed. But I noticed that I couldn't tolerate things, and even red meat. So when I was growing up, that was, you need to eat red meat and this sort of thing. And I really just had a hard time with it. I would find myself, when I would eat it, that it was like indigestion for hours, like 12 hours later. I mean, it was hard for me to even process it. So what was interesting was, for a period of time, I actually went vegan, and my cholesterol went normal, because they talk about MTHFR and they talk about even higher cholesterol levels with it. And then it went normal, but then I didn't feel very good either being totally vegan. Okay. Now, some people do, it's whatever works for your body. But ultimately, what ended up happening was, several years ago, probably 10 or 15 years ago, somebody tested me for the MTHFR gene mutation. And it was actually a naturopath. And that naturopath just said back then, because this was in the beginning, this was quite a long time ago, when they first started testing for these things, they didn't break it down as to which gene, because now we're into more detail about which gene and which one you have, and whether you have both or one or whatever. And so with that, she just said, you have MTHFR. What that means is you need to take methylated forms of B vitamins, because your body will be able to process them better. And that was all I was told. Well, there's a lot more to this story, because back then we didn't know much about it. And so I still, I took my methylated B vitamins and this sort of thing. Well, the wonderful part about, yes, you can do all sorts of different alternative things and check with either Western practitioners. You can check with naturopaths, are really good at knowing now and keeping up on the updates of what's going on. And there are even practitioners, nurse practitioners, others that are familiar with it. It's finding someone who's familiar with the MTHFR gene mutation. In what I do in total body modification, or TBM, or applied kinesiology, there are corrections that can be done. And there's this wonderful practitioner that, she's a TBM practitioner, that made a very specific protocol for this, which is wonderful. for helping the body harmonize to the B vitamins and things like that. And what was so interesting for me was when I had her do this MTHFR correction on me, because I hadn't had a TBM practitioner in years, like since the 1990s, when you first saw the video about my experience in the energy medicine or woo-woo one. I hadn't had a practitioner since the 1990s, and recently, over the past year, I have one now, and it is just a game changer as a TBM practitioner. It's amazing because I've had wonderful naturopaths and chiropractors and physical therapists and Western medicine folks. I've had just some really good luck, but no one could explain this whole liver thing and why I can't tolerate a bunch of stuff. So when we did this correction, it was fascinating to me because what happened was we did the correction, that's fine. And then I was starting to crave actually red meat. Like, okay, that's interesting. And so then I was like, oh, but I really don't want to eat it. And I'm not quite sure, whether this will be good. And I ate it and I was fine and have been ever since. So that was pretty dramatic. But the most dramatic thing that happened to me was we were doing other things, granted with my TBM practitioner, like doing heavy metal detox and some other things like that. But ultimately, what started to happen was my body started to actually be able to detoxify. And as it did that, strangest thing ever, wouldn't have believed it unless it happened to me, all of a sudden my rib cage started getting smaller and smaller because my liver was getting smaller. And I haven't gone and gotten another ultrasound to check it out. But I would imagine that if I ever need another ultrasound, which hopefully I won't, but if I ever needed one, that is going to be back to normal, which is just fascinating. So what I encourage you to do is whatever method, it's important. If you're one of these people like I was, where you can't tolerate a whole lot, if you're having different issues or cardiovascular issues, whatever it is, see if your Western medicine practitioner will test you for the MTHFR. And if they don't want to do that, that's completely fine. Find a naturopath that does. Find out different possibilities for yourself, because just because something worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You need to find something. If all of a sudden you're finding lots of different sensitivities, allergies, whatever, or other issues that we mentioned, definitely check it out, because I'll tell you what, for me personally, it was a game changer, and I hope it can be a game changer for you. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. You can also hit the subscribe button if you want to get more videos when they come out, and the notification bell to also let you know. So let me know what your experiences are in the comments section, or if you have any questions, don't hesitate and I'll be happy to answer them. Have a great one.